Kia ora tātou, and welcome to this webinar on what makes a great arts organisations and groups fund application. Thanks for joining us today. Let's gather our thoughts and begin with a karakia. Mauri oho, Mauri tū, Mauri ora kia tātou, haumie, huie, taikie. Kia ora, I'm Malcolm Burgess, Lead Practice Advisor Literature, and I'll be your co-host for this session alongside Maraea Timutumu, Lead Practice Advisor Ngātoi Māori. Before we begin, a few quick tikanga for you. The presentation itself will last about 25 minutes. Don't feel you need to take notes as we're recording the presentation and we'll upload it to our YouTube channel afterwards. You're welcome to pop any questions into the chat as we go. We'll try to answer them as we go. But if we don't have time, we'll address them at the end of the question section. We're also holding a live Q&A session later this week on 11 December at 12 to 12:45 that you can register for. And you can email your questions to koreromai@creativenz.gov.nz. If you'd like to speak with an advisor, you can use this user link that we'll put in the chat as well to book some time. But please do make sure you read through the content on the website and watch the webinars on YouTube first so we can make the most of our time together. Hopefully that will be in the chat shortly. So we'll just move on to the next slide there. So what we'll cover today, the focus of this webinar is to think about what makes a great application to this fund. We've already hosted webinars to provide an overview of the fund and one about eligibility, tiers, and the EOI process. Next week's webinar will focus on budgets and financials. You can find recordings of those sessions on our YouTube channel. So we'll start with a quick recap of the Arts Organisations and Groups Fund, then talk about what makes a great application and what to include in your application. We'll suggest some ways to think about your community and their needs, give you some leads for locating supporting research and evidence, talk about strategic fundraising and revenue generation plans, talk about some common pitfalls we see in applications, before finishing up with some ideas for finalising your application. At the end, we'll share where you can find more information and support. So to recap, the Arts Organisations and Groups Fund offers opportunities for 1, 2 or 3 years of support for arts organisations and groups with a dynamic vision for the arts in Aotearoa to deliver a programme of work that makes a positive impact in their community or communities. The intention of this fund is to provide a contribution towards an organisation's or group's artistic and operational costs. Offers of funding generally will be no more than 70% of an organisation's or group's average annual turnover from the last 2 financial years. The application process is intended to be as simple as possible for applicants. So an overview of, there are 4 funding tiers. Tier 1 is up to $50,000 per year. Tier 2 up to $125,000 per year. Tier 3 up to $500,000 and Tier 4 over $500,000 per year. To apply for more than $125,000 per year, your organisation and group or group must have an average annual turnover of more than $250,000 in the past 2 years, have received funding from Creative New Zealand within the past 3 years, excluding Creative Communities Scheme, and submit an expression of interest. The expression of interest form is on our website and takes around 5 minutes to complete. It'll be open until mid-March, and we appreciate early submission as the information will help us plan for next year. You can learn more about eligibility, tiers, and the EOI by watching last week's webinar, available on our YouTube channel. And now I'll hand over to Maraea to talk about what makes a great application.
We're prefacing this by reminding you all that we are currently experiencing very high demands across all our funds and have only been able to support 10 to 30% of applications recently. This means that the reason that an application is unsuccessful is not necessarily a reflection of the application or the kaupapa and its quality. Alongside the published indicators of vision for the arts and community impact, assessor panels try to recommend a balanced mix of applications for funding, taking into consideration regional spread, organisation ages and stages, types of programs, demographics of communities who benefit from the opportunity, and more. It's a significant challenge considering the scope of opportunity and need. Having said that, here are some tips that we've picked up from working with assessors over the years. Tell your story in your own words. Write as if you are talking to someone who does not know you or your sector. Be clear about your vision, who your communities are, and the impact of your mahi. Your purpose, your impact. We want to understand and support organisations for the purpose and the impact they have for the arts. You do not need to mirror CNZ's strategy or priorities or the government's Amplify strategy. Show the through line. Make sure the story flows from the community need to what you do, to what difference it makes and for whom. Assessors should be able to follow that connection easily. Be clear, not long. More is not always better. Answer each question as directly as you can and avoid jargon. Aim for strong, focused responses rather than trying to include everything. Be realistic and consistent. Be honest about what you have achieved and what you can deliver. Check that your narrative, budget, timelines, and strategic documents all line up and do not contradict each other. It's important to note that we don't want organisations to think that they have to say or do more than they already are doing, simply to be considered for funding. Use evidence that strengthens your story. Back up your answers with carefully chosen evidence that directly supports what you have said. Curate support materials so it is relevant and integrated, not tacked on. Again, more is not necessarily better. What to include in your application. There are set questions that you need to answer in your application. You can find these on our website, so we won't go over them now. When it comes to submitting your application, you can either type directly into CNZ's portal or you can upload a proposal document. But if you choose to create your own proposal template, please make sure you clearly answer each question required for the level of funding you're requesting. In addition to answering these questions, all applications must include some support information. What's required depends on the level of funding requested. You can also find this information on our website. There are the mandatory documents and what we will use to form our assessment of your application. When it comes to other optional material, you can provide additional support material, especially if it illustrates the needs of your communities, your connection to them, and the impact of your mahi. These will be different for different kinds of organisations, communities, and kaupapa, and are not a required part of your application. So we won't be providing suggestions or examples of additional support materials today. You can add information to your application by attaching files or including web links. We have guidance about format requirements on our website. But be very thoughtful about what you include. Make sure key messages are clear and not diluted by irrelevant or outdated material. Support material should be relevant and recent. It's about quality and not quantity. Thinking about your communities and their needs. So that's what you need to include. Let's have a look at how you can prepare your responses. One of the questions all applicants have to answer is what needs or opportunities have you identified for your communities and how are you currently engaging with them to meet those needs or opportunities? First of all, let's talk about what we mean by communities. Communities can look really different to every organisation. They might be based on a region, a shared whakapapa, an artistic practice, or a lived experience. They're just groups of people with a shared interest. Your organisations may serve more than one community. There might be some combination of your geographical community, your art form, or your audience. But remember, you don't need to deliver every community. You don't need to deliver to every community. Fewer, deeper relationships are often better than many shallow relationships. Identify the community or communities that you serve, their particular needs, and explain how you're engaging with them to meet those needs or opportunities. Mind mapping your community. It's not required for the application, but you might want to make a mind map of all the groups who are connected to your organisation. Like this example, how do you connect or engage with these groups? Once you've identified who your community or communities are, think about their needs. How do you know these needs exist? And don't make assumptions. Then think about the services your organisation provides that meets these needs. Engagement with Māori and Pasifika communities. If your work affects Māori or Pacific communities, there are some specific questions to answer. These help build confidence that you have authentic relationships with these groups, that you create culturally safe spaces for Māori or Pacific artists and audiences, and that you care for taonga like stories, language, and other intellectual property. How you answer these questions will depend on the extent to which you're working with Māori or Pacific communities and the amount you're seeking. If your organisation is not working with Māori or Pacific communities, then you won't need to answer them. Here are some things to think about when responding to the questions on these areas. These communities might be based on whakapapa connections, cultural or artistic practice, language, or location. But they could also be interest-based or situational. For example, new parents or caregivers, migrant or newcomer families, rainbow communities, disabled people, youth communities or groups, social groups connected by place or interest, or people who engage online or through digital platforms. Think about how you can show existing relationships, prior consultation, shared leadership, co-design conversations, or evidence of ongoing engagement. What can you provide to show that you have the support of these groups to do your mahi? Be honest about where you are in the relationship, what's already in place, and what you're building. We understand that different organisations are at different stages when it comes to this mahi. Locating research and evidence. When it comes to demonstrating need and impact, you might already collect information about your communities and their needs by conducting surveys, gathering feedback, or through wānanga or talanoa. You might also find evidence through research. There are lots of useful sites that can help, including the advocacy section of our website. Our fact finder is full of research and evidence that supports the benefits of arts, creativity, and ngā toi for community wellbeing. And our guide for the arts advocates provides storytelling advice that will help bring the data to life. Community.net also contains a lot of great resources, including Community Research Tool, where you can search by topic and a research about measuring impact for community organisations. Other sites that you might want to explore include Stats New Zealand, Manatū Taonga, Te Puni Kōkiri, and Community Matters. Now I'll hand back to Malcolm to kōrero about strategic plans.
Kia ora, Mariah. Some people have asked about what we expect when it comes to strategic plans and revenue generation or fundraising plans. A strategic plan doesn't have to be long or complicated. Ideally, your organisation has one already, but for the purpose of this fund, we're simply looking for a document that explains your vision, what you're trying to achieve in the arts or for your community, your priorities, what matters most over the next 1 to 3 years, your approach, how you plan to deliver your program of work, and how you'll use your resources to achieve your vision. It can be short, it can be simple, it can be in your own format. We're not expecting glossy publications or corporate language, just a clear outline of where you're heading and how your mahi will get you there. If it's already available online, you can include a web link in your application, or you can attach a PDF. Fundraising plans. A fundraising plan outlines how your organisations intend to bring in income from sources other than CNZ. It doesn't need to be complicated either. It's just a document that sets out the types of fundraising you'll pursue, such as donations, events, campaigns, the audiences or groups you'll approach, the methods you'll use, and the time frame you're working to. The goal is to show you have a clear and realistic approach to generating support and that you've thought through how it contributes to your overall sustainability. A revenue generation plan does a similar job. It describes how you'll earn income through your activities, the things your organisation does that generates money. For example, ticket sales, workshop fees, commissions, sales of creative products or publications, hire fees, touring fees or licensing, partnerships or co-investment. The plan just needs to outline what your revenue streams are, how you will develop or maintain them, what assumptions you're working with, how this income supports your organisation over time. So before we go, it might be helpful to give you some things to avoid. So let's talk about common reasons applications are unsuccessful. As we've said before, we're currently experiencing a high volume of applications across all our funds, so sometimes we're just not able to support high quality ideas. It's not always a reflection of the quality of the application or the kaupapa. But some reasons we've seen applications deprioritised in previous AOG rounds are misalignment with the fund. The work may be valuable, but not what this fund is designed to support. This fund is for organisations and groups who have arts or Ngātoe outcomes as their core activity, who deliver a programme of work that makes a positive impact for their communities. Seeking funding for specific activities or projects. This is because the AOG fund is about contributing to the impact an organisation makes through its programme of work, rather than to support one-off projects. Questions not fully answered. Responses that don't address the question, that feel vague or generic. This can sometimes happen if you've relied too heavily on AI tools, for example, or use jargon that makes it hard to understand. Weak connection to communities and impact. It's unclear who the work is for, how you engage with them, where you sit in the wider arts ecosystem, or what difference the mahi will make. Lack of focus, realism, or coherence. Trying to include too much, proposing work that isn't viable, such as reaching wide-ranging markets or communities, or kaupapa, or not acknowledging risks and challenges. Information that doesn't align. Budgets, activities, goals, and strategic documents don't match each other, or there's no evidence or need to support what's proposed. Pass over to Mariah again.
Before you submit, once you've prepared your application, take a moment to reflect and get feedback from peers. Have you answered every question? Have you collated the required support material asked for on our website? Does any additional support material help illustrate your points? Have you been as clear and specific as you can be? Imagine yourself as an assessor. Think about what you've said from their point of view. Have you answered the question in a clear and compelling way? Ask a trusted colleague, ideally someone outside of your organisation, to read your application and give feedback. Does it make sense to them? Can they reflect back to you key elements like your vision for the arts, which communities you serve, and how you meet those needs? Make sure the important information about you, your communities, and the impact you make are easy to understand without the reader having to search for it or draw conclusions themselves. Find more information and support. This has been a lot to take in. And again, don't worry if you miss some bits. We'll upload the recording to our YouTube channel in the coming days. You can find the recordings of our previous webinars there too. Next Monday, the webinar will be on building the numbers, budgets and financials. If you have any questions, we're holding a live chat Q&A session every Thursday after a webinar. Please feel welcome to join us. Even if you don't ask any questions, it's educational to see what others have asked. You can also email questions to kōreromai@creativenz.govt.nz. The Big Idea did a great interview with our Senior Manager for Arts Development, Claire Murdoch. We recommend giving this a read as well. We'll be publishing the assessment criteria for this fund later this month. As with the rest of our current funds, these will not be extensive and will directly reflect what we have talked to you through today. Otherwise, all of the information you need to start preparing your application is on our website. If you need specific advice, you can speak with one of our advisors through the booking service on our website. Please make sure you read the information on our website and watch the webinars first so you get the most out of your session. It's a good idea to be really clear about the specific advice you need when you're completing the booking form. This means our advisors can be prepared to help you make the most of that session. In summary, what makes a great arts organisations and group application? Be authentic and clear. Tell your story in your own words. Make your vision, communities and impact easy to understand. Show the through line. Connect community need to your mahi, to the difference it makes. Use specific examples, not general statements. Focus on impact, not volume. We're interested in what changes because of your work, not how many activities you can list or how many letters of your support you've attached. Quality beats quantity in impact, answers and in support material. Keep it realistic and consistent. Your budget, timeline, strategy and narrative should align and reflect what you can generally deliver. Use the tools available. Explore the guidance on our website, watch the webinars, attend Q&As and speak with an advisor if needed. Thanks again for joining us today. I hope you've found our time together valuable. If your question hasn't been answered today or if you have any more questions, don't forget to register for our Q&A session on Thursday. And additionally, you can email our kōreromai.creativenewzealand.govt.nz. I runga i te kaupapa o te rā, me noi tātou. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia i te urutā. Kia wātea, kia māma, te ngākau, te tinana, te wairua i te ara takatā. Koia rā e rongo. Whakairia ake ki runga. Kia wātea, ai rā, kua wātea. Haumie, hui e, tai ki e. Hei kona.